What's up, everyone? Welcome back to the Vanguard Live. How you doing, Zach?
Doing fucking awesome today, man. Super excited to be back. Obviously, we've got a lot of shit to talk about today. Katie Halper, all kinds of shit like that. Basically blowing up the internet as far as our world is concerned with like this big bombshell. But then we've also got our Q&A with our patrons afterwards today. So busy day over here at the Vanguard. Super stoked for it though, and yeah, ready to break this all down.
Yeah, we got a lot of good stuff to talk about today. And as Zach mentioned, after the live stream, we'll be doing our Q&A on a separate live stream. So obviously, if you're not already subscribed, make sure to subscribe, hit that notification bell so that you'll be notified when we go live again right after this show to do our monthly Q&A, which we're always super excited for. You're not going to want to miss out on it this month. It's going to be a really good time. I've been looking at some of the questions we already have. Great stuff. So super excited for that. And yeah, obviously we have a great show today too. Some real breaking news to discuss from last night. I was, just shocked to see, honestly. But before we get into all of that, we do always like to start the show with a big old shout out to the patron community. So thank you guys so much for the support. We really appreciate that. We like to start and end all of our live streams with a big shout out to our patrons because they do make the show possible. We wouldn't be able to do it without you guys and your support. So if you're interested in joining our patron community, if you enjoy our show, if you agree with our perspective and want to see more, then please do consider hitting up that link. It's going to be in the description. As always, patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. Again, if you want to support the show, have your name up here on the shout out screen and get access to the other benefits like our Discord community. But with that out of the way, again, shout out to the patrons. Yeah, do you want to start with the Katie Halper thing, or do you want to maybe start with something while we let a few more people trickle in? Just a quick story. Maybe we can talk about the student loan thing.
That was exactly gonna say. Yeah, so guys, this is something that I mean, obviously I have a dog in this fight, right? Like I've tried to be really honest about that because I know everybody has their own opinions about this, but I got student loans, right? So I was stoked when I found out that even 10 grand of it was getting canceled. Like I know in my head that that's crumbs and we need to demand more because it was not, sufficient. But I'll be completely honest, guys. When I woke up that morning, I texted Gavin. I was like, bro, this is actually going to be like huge for like my financial situation over the next couple of years. And I feel like a lot of people felt that way. Like it was just going to give people like, and I know some people have like $100,000 in debt, and that's like, okay, that feels like a drop in a bucket, and we need to be fighting for those people. But I feel like a lot of people have like $20,000, at least in the Midwest. I know it's way more if you went to like some like elite fucking like actually prestigious university. But anyway, it was going to basically like take out like half of my fucking student loans. A lot of people were in that, but slowly the hype starts to unravel, and you take a look at what's going on, and it starts to get a little more suspect. It's like, well, they did this way, and you start to see reporting, and it's like, well, kind of odd that they went about it in this way because it opens them up to lawsuits, and then you get that seed planted. We've kind of been talking about how potentially it could be like a Senate parliamentarian thing where they're like pump faking on it, and they're like, oh, we wanted to do this, but we just can't because of the law, and all of those kinds of deals. Obviously, Brianna Joy Gray has done a great job kind of talking about those potential situations on her show as well as on the Hill. So yeah, we're all waiting for the boot to drop, right? I'm not getting too excited anymore until I see my Nelnet account change. Then I see this last night, that tweet that Gavin had just thrown up, and that is that there's going to be a massive change. The Biden administration already backing down, already minimizing the number of people who will be eligible for student debt cancellation by 4 million borrowers. 4 million borrowers. And essentially what it is if you got loans from the government, but the government, then, got those loans from a private company, the government saying, oh, we'll get sued by the private company, we can't cancel those, you guys are all SOL, essentially, right? So this tweet up here: Biden's reversal of cancellation eligibility for student loan borrowers with commercially held FFELP debt. Yeah, so that was essentially, commercially held means owned by a private corporation, but they were able to secure the loan through FAFSA and through the government loan programming. So yeah, so 4.06 million borrowers miss out on relief among a total 9.38 million. So almost half. They just booted almost half of everybody off of the the student loan forgiveness plan. Like, tell me how that's a fucking good idea. Tell me how tangling $10,000 in relief for people, telling them they're going to get it, and then being like, LOL, sorry, never mind, you're not. Like, are you fucking dumb as rocks? Like, I know you are. I'm going to start calling him Bird Brain Biden. Like, this is the stupidest shit I've ever heard in my entire life. It makes me angry. I found out I still make the cut, but I'm just like, this is stupid. Like, now I don't even, like, it's just like, it's all fucked.
Yeah, it's totally fucked. Pure kind of neoliberalist means testing and actions. But again, you think they would like come up with the stuff before announcing it, like you said, and then be like, oh, actually, never mind. Not you guys, you 4 million people that got all excited. Nope, never mind. Like, what a way to just add insult to injury.
I'm talking about 500 guys here. We're talking about 4 million people. I mean, what the fuck? It's insane.
Yeah, total insanity. I don't know what spurred him to do this, especially with midterms coming up. Like, it's not a good look, bro. Like, are you trying to lose? So yeah, I figured we start off the show by mentioning that because just totally damning. Another crazy move from Joe Biden. And thank you so much for letting me know. I'll turn that down right now. I really appreciate the feedback from you guys, or rather, I'll turn Zach's up a little bit. But yeah, thanks for the feedback. Always appreciate that. I know sometimes our mics are out of whack.
Yeah, we've been working on setting them farther away. It's actually, there's a lot that goes into audio. So anybody who's out there who's an audio producer, I got a lot of love and respect for you because this shit is really, really complicated. One other quick thing I did want to shout out while we were talking about it at the beginning of the show is the way that midterms are shaking down. I have been following the fuck out of the midterm polling. I know it's stupid. I know it's always wrong. I've been watching the waves. I've ride the roller coaster every year. I'm a fucking idiot. I just, I'm like, yeah, I know. Maybe Nate Silver's got it right this time. I'll reach for Trafalgar too. Like, let's fucking balance it out, right? And I've been doing it, and for fun, I like to, like I place little bets for intellectual honesty. It's like, now I will fucking know, like, and all these things, right? And the way that it's shaken down, and I've been following this so closely, guys. It's actually gone from being a clear potentiality that the Dems could win both the, like, at least 50, like retain the 50 seats in the Senate and win the House, to now I'm gonna go out on a limb and say I think they're gonna lose the House. I think they're gonna lose the House bad, and I think they're gonna lose the Senate bad. And I don't even know if my most, I like I said, I sent Gavin like 2 weeks ago. I was like, bro, I'm getting cold feet about betting big on Fetty Wap over here. And like, now I'm looking at it and it's like, oh, Jesus Christ. Now it's like even money on predicted for, not quite even money, but still, you're just like, oh no. Brian and Emily over at Counterpoints were doing a segment on it this morning, and they were looking at all of the polling, and it's going to be a really tight race for Fetterman. And obviously the stroke, I think, had a lot to do with how, he's not able to campaign as well as he was, through no fault of his own. Obviously that's a medical situation, but one of the appeals of Fetterman was that he could go out there and like fucking stir up a crowd. And I just don't think that like he has the like physical ability to do that right now. And also, just the fucking swinging tide, like of the fact that the energy is with the Republicans. But Gavin, what are you thinking about that? Do you think that Fetterman still has a good chance? And also, what are your thoughts down in Georgia?
Yeah, I think that it's about 50-50 in both states, honestly. I'm not going to come out here and pretend that I have any insight into the situation other than what the polls show, which is that it's neck and neck, a coin flip. I think it's very likely that Fetterman could still pull it out just because of how elitist and unlikable Dr. Oz is. I also think it's possible that Dr. Oz is just kind of able to ride that anti-Biden wave and sail into office that way, regardless of his personal quality as a candidate. So that's possible. And the same thing with Georgia. Herschel Walker, terrible candidate, absolutely god awful. But there is still about a 50% chance, in my opinion, that he pulls it out. I mean, we're talking about Georgia after all. This is not freaking New York. So it's definitely possible that he wins again just by the virtue of being a Republican. So I think 50-50 for both of them. It's going to be super, super tight, especially in those states and other ones too. I mean, we got Wisconsin, we got Nevada. These are all states that could really go either way.
Oh yeah, I think Nevada's. Yeah, I won't fucking know, right? I think Arizona might be the safest of all the states that are up right now, but even that is up for contention, obviously. What's his name? I think Kelly is the guy that's
Mark Kelly.
Mark Kelly, yeah. Anyway, so yeah, the other thing that I didn't fully appreciate about the Georgia race, because I admittedly I thought that with re-election and everything, and the fact that Herschel Walker was like, he's nowhere near as compelling as Warnock, right? He's just not at all in the same league of like political fucking campaigning. So I brushed it off. But the one thing I didn't consider, and I was wrong not to, was how much the people of Georgia remember that man from when he was a Georgia University football star. Like, apparently, I didn't think about this, but it is the South, so of course I did. Like, they're like, they care about like fucking college football down there. They remember that motherfucker from his college football days, and I think he's like riding that. Like, you know what I mean? I mean, so it would
That's
be
so
crazy.
stupid. Like Patrick Mahomes, great quarterback here in Kansas City. Do I want him to be in the Senate? Like, no. Like, I mean, unless he comes out and happens to be like a based fucking socialist, but he's definitely not. I just don't get why people are like, oh, that guy was great on the field. He must be great in the Senate. Like,
He
what?
opened 30 Whataburgers in our town.
Absolutely. Anyway, we can probably segue into our big story for the day. This broke last night. Absolutely took me by surprise. And that has to do with Katie Halper, who, if you guys have been paying attention, has been doing some guest hosting on the show Rising. But not only that, she's basically been a part of Rising since the beginning. If you guys were watching back in the day on the Hill when Crystal and Saagar were still holding it down over at Rising before they infamously left and started Breaking Points, that seems like so long ago. But if you guys remember back then, Katie Halper would come on every single week for a weekly segment about the media, and they would kind of make fun of different media segments and stuff like that. So Katie Halper is a longtime mainstay of the Hills Rising, and this is absolute insanity, guys. She posted this last night. I was censored and fired by The Hill over defending Rashida Tlaib and labeling Israeli apartheid. The good news, I shot the censored video with an actually independent media outlet, see below, and we'll check that out in a second. But this is absolute insanity. I mean, imagine if during apartheid South Africa, a journalist came out here and said, I am against apartheid South Africa. And then people said, so you're against South Africa's right to exist? Like, no one would say that. But because the situation has to do with Israel and Palestine, that's the line from all of these defenders of Israelis' apartheid policy, which is that to even criticize their system of apartheid is to criticize Israel itself, and to say that Israel itself doesn't have a right to exist. Period. When that's a complete bastardization, a complete perversion of the sentiment that's actually being expressed, which is that progressives should not support apartheid. So Israel can still exist. It just, you can't support the apartheid element of it. In the same way that, back during apartheid South Africa, you could still support South Africa's right to exist as a country without defending their system of apartheid. Add to that, as one of our commenters in chat pointed out, Katie Halper is literally a Jew herself. So this is absolute insanity from basically every direction.
Yeah, look, it's one of those weird things in American media that this is like a line in the sand that I feel like they just won't let you fucking cross, because they know that the public opinion is changing. It's changing quickly on this. The more that people see, the more that people understand about what is actually being done. The legitimate conditions that people are forced to live in, the massive inequality, all of the different things, the downright fucking violence, the murders, all these things that occur. Nobody can support that when you know what's happening, right? So they have to have a airtight fucking lock on the narrative here. And since that started to fall apart recently, right? And now it's like not that compelling for people to just be like, oh, you're an anti-Semite, that's why you want fucking equality for Palestinians in Israel. It's like, no, I believe in equality across the board. Check my record, right? Like, you know what I'm saying? But and so they've had to really put their foot down, right? Especially with anytime you see typically independent individuals branch out into mainstream media. This is one of those things I feel like it always comes back around and they get fired, right? So obviously you have Katie Halper with The Hill, and it's always important to remember, The Hill is not independent, right? It's owned by a billionaire that was a big Trump guy. We've talked about this 10 million times. But Nathan Robinson used to have a monthly column in The Guardian, right? And we have obviously Nathan Robinson's a bit of a mixed bag over at Current Affairs, but he was advocating a very correct position on Israel Palestine in The Guardian, and The Guardian was like, yeah, go fuck yourself. You don't ever write for us again. It's just like, what? I mean, and it's the same thing. Like, and Nathan Robinson, doesn't happen to be Jewish, but obviously he's not like a fucking anti-Semite. He was just advocating for fucking equality, but they tried to portray it as like, oh my god, like we can't support this kind of like fucking bigotry and all that kind of junk. And it's the same shit that like even Bernie, who had a fucking terrible ass policy on Israel, he had to bat away the like, oh, self-hating Jewish man, like fucking all that kind of like ridiculous, downright offensive accusations. So yeah, it just seems like in American media, this is one of those things where they know that the narrative is changing and they don't know what to do about it. So all they can do is just like fucking go full on totalitarian free speech denialism.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, I think that pretty recently, within the last year or two, the Hill actually was sold to a local news powerhouse called Nexstar. So it's actually no longer owned by that Trump supporting billionaire. I think his name was James Finkelstein. That's who used to own the Hill, but then it was sold to Nexstar Media Group, a television news company, for $130 million. So yeah, it's pure corporate media. Don't get it twisted, despite the fact that they've platformed, independent minded voices like Katie Halper, like Brianna Joy Gray, like Olayemi Olor, and people that, we have on the Vanguard and talk to. Despite the fact that they've employed some independent minded people, The Hill is not in any way, shape, or form independent media. They're corporate to the core. And honestly, it's a miracle that they let people like Katie Halper, speak on that platform in the first place. But apparently this was the line they could not cross, which I find odd for a number of reasons. For one, again, as I said, Katie Halper has been a longtime mainstay of the Hill's rising, and they've recently seemingly been kind of promoting her as an up and coming actual host. Why would they try to bring her on board as this host, full well knowing her positions on these issues? I mean, if you subscribe to the Katie Halper show on YouTube, basically every single clip is about foreign policy. She constantly talks about Israel and Palestine. This is like one of her main issues. I would say like one of her top 5 issues, probably. So did they not know she held this opinion? Like, or were they just never expecting her to espouse it on their platform? Either way, it's stupid. Like, why would you bring on this person, promote them as a host, constantly have them on as a guest, and then as soon as they want to talk about one of their opinions that everyone already knows they have, nope, you're done, you're fired, it's over? Makes no sense to me. It seems totally out of the blue. But I guess we can watch Katie's video here and see exactly what happened.
Yeah, it just reminds me a lot of what happened with fucking Rolling Stone and Useful Idiots. It was like they fired them for their political opinions. It was like, what the fuck did you expect from Matt Taibbi and Katie Halper? They're going to go out there and they're going to say what the fuck they think. And if you've read any of their or seen any of their previous work, you kind of got to know what you're signing up for. That's why people want to watch it. But anyway.
Absolutely. And also just quickly, let's address these super chats. Thank you so much, MX Row, for the $4.99. Really appreciate that, Max, or MX, sorry. Also really appreciate you, Kelly. Thank you so much for the $4.99. Establishment outlets literally have become full-blown allergic to the truth. Yeah, that's definitely true. And especially on this issue, this is just one line that you cannot cross. So that's so true, Kelly.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that it's only going to get worse and worse as they try and tighten their grip and protect their, status quo. Might not be allowed now, but back then I think the results would be the same, and ex-reporter would be smeared and canceled as we supported apartheid. Yeah, no, I mean, I get it. There's definitely been, strides in making it so that, this is a more normalized position. I just think that that's why, they were willing to sacrifice it all. As Gavin mentioned, they've been really teeing up Katie Halper to be one of the mainstays. It feels like, they've, been going through hosts like crazy. It would make sense for them to put like a familiar face on there and just keep it a little more consistent. But apparently that was no more, because clearly Katie's got her principles. She's not going to just fucking put up with that kind of shit. Like, oh no, you can't talk about this like deeply important issue. It's like, well, go fuck yourself. I'll go to something somewhere else. So anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, I have no doubt that people would have been smeared for pushing back against apartheid South Africa. People obviously were smeared, but were people saying that if you pushed back on apartheid South Africa, the end conclusion was that South Africa doesn't have a right to exist? Like, that's just where I find it's really ridiculous. Because, yeah, like obviously people were pushing back on apartheid South Africa that still felt that South Africa as a country had the right to exist. No one was criticizing the concept of South Africa as a country. They were fucking criticizing its apartheid policy. Same thing with Israel. So I just find that crazy. But anyway, thank you so much, Hysteric Raider. Really appreciate the $5. Also, thank you so much, Adi the Bug Catcher. Really appreciate the $10, Adi. Thank you so much. Maybe we will see Katie Halper's own show with Breaking Points. Also, good to finally catch you guys live again. It had been a while. Let's hope so, Adi. I think that'd be awesome. I mean, I'm a big fan of Katie Halper's work. Maybe don't always agree with her on everything, but for the most part, I think she's a really great voice. And yeah, I mean, wouldn't that be dope if Breaking Points could poach yet another regular from the Hills Rising? That'd be fucking epic.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's the dream for BP, is to just keep poaching the talent and to continue to make their own kind of network, almost, a truly independent network with heterodox voices, right? So that would be insane. That would be tight. Obviously, as they continue to grow, I imagine we'll see, more and more from the like Breaking Points network, if you will. So yeah, and shout out to you, Adi. Always good to see you in the chat.
Yeah, really appreciate that. Also, thank you, Hokie Salem, for the $10. The Hill wants to boss workers around instead of finding ways to empower them. Horrible leadership. Well, before we get into this video, because I do want to watch Katie's video where she explains what happened. This reminds me of a tweet that I saw from Glenn Greenwald that I thought was so accurate as to this whole situation. He said, a media outlet that pretends to air free debates but then fires journalists for expressing views disliked by management isn't about journalism but activism. It shouldn't matter what you think about Israel. It gets billions from the U.S., and Katie Halper has the right to debate it. He then goes on to say, this is bizarre to watch. The Hill stumbled by accident into a great and highly popular program, Rising, built by Crystal and Saagar. Since then, they've done everything to destroy it, from driving that duo away to now firing Katie Halper, an American Jew, for Israel heresy. That's so true. And also, let's not forget the whole episode with Kim Iverson. I'm not the biggest fan of Kim Iverson as a commentator, but there's no doubt she was raking in the views for the Hill. She was getting a lot of views for the Hill, like comparable to what Saagar and Crystal were getting back in the day. They also kind of drove her away by excluding her from the Fauci interview that she ended up quitting over. So yeah, now they're down to what, just Brianna and Robbie. They lost Ryan. They lost Emily to Breaking Points. They've now fired Katie Halper. They lost Kim Iverson. Obviously, they lost Crystal and Saagar. Now they're literally just down to Brianna and Robbie. It's only a matter of time before Brianna Joy Gray says something that's like slightly too far out of the mainstream that she gets fired too. Like, what the fuck? Is this just going to literally become any other shitty news show that no one wants to watch because you fire all your talent? It's crazy.
Yeah, I think it's funny. It's one of those like bad management decisions too, because I just don't think. I don't think financially, like maybe like they're just not making like a ton of money from it, so they're just like kind of putting it out to another. But you think that would be antithetical to how you would run a news media outlet? Like, you want to reach people, you want to grow, you want to have all these things. And the only reason I say that is because I remember Crystal talking about back in the day, like they actually had to twist the Hill's arm for them to even put it on YouTube in the first place. So maybe they've just decided that this is like a bigger thorn in their side than it's worth. But yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, we've watched them go through. I mean, one of our most viewed videos of all time and one of my favorites that we've ever done was when we were dragging the shit out of the like Diet Crystal and Saagar that they had paraded out there like a week after Crystal and Saagar left to go to Breaking Points, and they were just god fucking awful. It was horrible. They had no original insights to say at all. They brought on like this like crazy OAN lady and a guy that looked like Roger Federer, and it was like, let's have a neoliberal talk to a fucking crazy person for like 20 minutes. It's like, I'm not gonna watch that. I don't think anybody else is. And their views just fucking tanked, ate shit. It wasn't until they started bringing in heterodox people like Kim Iverson, like Brianna Joy Gray, that really it started to pick back up again.
Absolutely. And some people in the chat are raising the good comments. It's like I hope that Brianna Joy Gray starts, giving her take on Israel nonstop. Like, so is Brianna Joy Gray not allowed to talk about how Israel is an apartheid state now? Like, this really does raise those questions going forward. It's like, so when I watch Brianna do a segment or whatever, like, do I have to know now that in the back of her mind she's thinking can't talk about Israel because I have to I can't lose my job. That creates some really weird kind of censorship going on here. That I mean, if I was working for the Hill, I don't know what I'd do. I mean, obviously, it's hard to just say goodbye to a fat paycheck and your livelihood. I'm not saying anyone has to do that. But do I want that in the back of my like? If I was on this show and I in the back of my mind, I'm like, oh, I can't talk about this one really important thing because Zach's gonna fire me or something. Like, I wouldn't want to fucking do that necessarily. Like, it would just be weird to sit here and be like, knowing in the back of my mind, like, oh shit, I gotta kind of walk on eggshells when it comes to this one topic. You know what I'm saying?
100%. I mean, that kind of goes back to the initial theory of independent media, right? I mean, the whole idea about not working for places where they can control you like this, because then it's not independent media. It's a lousy fucking like it's a cheap proximity, right? Like, or facsimile or whatever the fuck that phrase I'm looking for. Excuse me. Yeah, it's just it's not the same, right? And it does try and present itself as this like independent media. And I remember Crystal and Saagar both talked about that a lot. They were like, we felt uncomfortable being looped in with the independent media group because we really weren't independent. And do you know what's funny? I don't know why it kind of like reminds me of like Kevin Smith when he would talk about being in the studio system. He was like always described as like an independent fucking filmmaker, but he wasn't, and that's what fucked him down the road. That's why we don't have fucking Dogma 2 coming down the pipeline. But that's a weird like curveball example. But it's like, yeah, when you're not like actually independent, you're just kind of playing independent, like you're doing dress up like the fucking actual independent people do. I'm not saying there's not a purpose for a show like Rising, and I don't begrudge anybody that goes on there and does it. Like, that's their business. It wouldn't be the job for me, especially knowing what I know now, but I've kind of known that since, I mean, Crystal and Saagar left, right? Remember when they banned Kyle from coming on the show? They were like, Kyle is talking shit on us on his show. He's not allowed to be on here anymore. And that was a big part of why Crystal and Saagar were like, well, what the fuck? You can't tell us who to have on our show. We're leaving. So we've always known, right? And to be honest, guys, people used to like fucking drag Ryan Grimm through the mud for working at The Intercept, right? And they would drag him for like being Piero Miglior's little bitch, right? And then everybody just like kind of got rid of that criticism when a lot of commentators that they like started working for a conglomerate. They were like, Kim Iverson is independent. It's like, yeah, well, weren't you just like pulling your fucking hair out saying that Ryan Grimm couldn't be trusted for anything because he worked for Piero Miglior? Worst billionaires fund fucking The Hill, right? So it's like, okay, guys, like eat your fucking crow on that one. So anyway, we've always kind of known this. It's always been the like quiet secret. It's like, yeah, we react to this because there's a lot of good points that get made on this show, but it's not independent media. Like, and clearly this is, the chickens came home to roost on that one.
Yeah, just makes me glad I don't work for a goddamn corporation, to be honest. I mean, I've never been watching this kind of shit go down. Just makes me so glad to have our own thing, 100% viewer funded. As someone said, the only people that can fire us is our patrons. So if you think we're talking smack, you can unsubscribe to us or whatever. But we don't have some fucking corporate overlord coming down here to say you're not allowed to talk about that. Like, you overstepped the line. Like, it's just so fucking, I can't imagine it. I can't imagine it. Anyway, let's hear from Katie herself about what exactly went down. This is all very, very dramatic and unexpected. So, let's just take a look here.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to the Katie Halper Show. I'm your host, Katie Halper, as you know. And as you all know, I do host, obviously, the Katie Halper Show. I also host Useful Idiots, another podcast and YouTube show. And I recently had started doing some guest co-hosting at Rising, which is a YouTube show hosted by The Hill. I even pitched a show to The Hill, which was a lefty version of The View, which we shot a pilot for last Friday. And for the last 3 years, I've appeared on The Hill's Rising as a guest once a week to do a weekly segment on media and politics. And I've always really enjoyed working with The Hill. And I felt like I was given the freedom to talk about whatever I wanted to talk about. And I really did see it as a place free of the censorship and the kind of like party line enforcement that defines other corporate media. So as I said, I'd been doing some guest hosting at The Hill, and I really enjoyed it. And I hosted this Monday and had already lined up some more hosting events for the near future. And Rising hosts do these things called radars, which are basically monologues delivered straight to the camera. So I wanted to deliver a monologue about Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib being criticized by some over comments she made about people who are progressive except on Palestine. And she was slammed for describing Israel as an apartheid state. So my monologue basically defended Tlaib and kind of broke down why Israel is, in fact, an apartheid state. So I wrote my monologue and I delivered it, and the Hill filmed it, but then they did not air it. And when I pushed back against their not airing it, I was fired, not just as a host, but also as a weekly contributor, which is something I'd been doing again for 3 years. So I do want to be clear that the producers I worked with were nothing but supportive. They were great, and they really wanted their higher ups, their bosses, the executives to do the right thing. But sadly, they wouldn't. And this is obviously really sad and frustrating and disappointing and infuriating. And there's nothing I can do about their decision to not run the monologue. And there's nothing I can do about their decision to stop working with me or to fire me. But what I can do, and what I did do, was film and release the video that they wouldn't air. So I reached out to an actually progressive, actually independent, actually uncensored media outlet called Breakthrough News, and we made the video. So it's going to be coming out tonight at Breakthrough News. You'll be able to find it at Breakthrough News. You'll also then be able to find it at The Katie Halper Show, youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. And I'll be talking about this more moving forward, but I just wanted to let people know. And in the meantime, of course, free Palestine and support independent media. And of course, you can support The Katie Halper Show at Patreon. That's patreon.com/The Katie Halper Show. And please subscribe to this YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Katie Halper Show. And I think that's about it. I mean, I see a lot of comments. That's great. And I really want to thank everyone for being supportive of this show and of
I think that basically sums up what happened. She tried to do a radar in which she defended Representative Rashida Tlaib for accurately identifying Israel as an apartheid state. And by the way, this isn't just some fringe opinion of some fringe member of Congress. This is literally the opinion of Amnesty International. Israel's apartheid against Palestinians. Let's look here. In May of 2021, Palestinian families in Sheikh Jarrah, a neighborhood in occupied East Jerusalem, began protesting against Israel's plan to forcibly evict them from their homes to make way for Jewish settlers. Many of the families are refugees who settled in Sheikh Jarrah after being forcibly displaced around the time of Israel's establishment as a state in 1948. Since Israel occupied East Jerusalem and the rest of the West Bank until 1967, Palestinians in Sheikh Jarrah have been continuously targeted by Israeli authorities who use discriminatory laws to systematically dispossess Palestinians of their land and homes for the benefit of Jewish Israelis. This is apartheid. So again, this is not some fringe view that's only held by, a few crazy radical leftist members of Congress or something like that. No, this is literally the viewpoint and opinion of Amnesty International, a viewpoint that apparently is no longer permissible on the Hill.
Yep. Yeah. Fucking crazy. I don't know. Yeah. The one thing I did want to mention that she talked about there, apparently they finally shot that pilot for the Lefty View too. Gavin and I have been covering that for a while, the developments of like a potential Lefty View. That would have been so base. Fuck the Hill for depriving us of that. But anyway, yeah, this is Ryan also coming out here, co-host of Hill's TV's Rising. Ryan obviously was on the Hill for a while, left to go be a part of the Breaking Points Network. Recorded a segment this week on Israel's apartheid government. The segment was first held and then spiked, and the reporter, who after 3 years with the program was told she was done, pushback story. I actually read their monologue that she wrote, and in this piece, because Ryan links the I don't know, whatever her actual writing, her teleprompter for it. And it seems so it was a great monologue. It was very compelling. It made the point clearly and thoroughly and, without compromise. So yeah, you can't watch The Hill and expect to get a fucking well-rounded view of what's happening, because clearly they're shearing the sheep to fucking, meet their own fucking,
Absolutely. And as you mentioned earlier about Nathan Robinson, he says, just remember that when one of us is fired, it not only keeps the audience from hearing our own views, but sends a message to everyone else that if they criticize Israel's apartheid or U.S. support for it, they will lose their job. And again, that's the even more chilling ramification here. Yes, it obviously sucks for Katie Halper personally. I mean, she's out of a job, I guess. Hopefully she gets picked up by Breakthrough News or Breaking Points or something like that. But the real issue here is the precedent this sets. Now, everyone else, like I said, is Brianna Joy Gray now going to be afraid to talk about Israel and Palestine on Rising? I don't think so. I'm not casting her freaking character into question or anything. I'm sure she's, more than willing to be consistent about that and all that stuff. But I'm just saying, like, you don't want to create that situation for any journalist where now there's certain things that are off limits to talk about. There are certain opinions that cross a line to espouse on your platform. So yeah, as Nathan Robinson says, it sends a message to everyone else that if they criticize Israel's apartheid or U.S. support for it, they will lose their job. So again, now if you work for the Hill, good luck doing a monologue about BDS or about anything related to this issue, because even if you do it, you're going to know in the back of your mind that, oh shit, like this might literally cost me my fucking livelihood. That's a terrible situation for a platform or an outlet or a publication that purports to do journalism, right? That's the complete opposite of the situation that should be set up. And again, this is not a fringe opinion. This is the opinion that is literally held by Amnesty International. I can only repeat it so many times. This is not some fringe conspiracy theory that we're talking about here. This is the literal reality on the ground. There's no other words to describe it. Like, what do you want me to come up with a new word to describe apartheid? Like, can I not just call a spade a spade? Like, it literally is. I would have gone farther. I would have called it a fucking ethno state. But apartheid's a little more polite, I guess.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it is definitely a marked, like, a line in the sand now. Like, I mean, the fact that they just were so explicit, terminated everything, she's gone, no questions asked. Like, I do think this is a marked pivot for the Hill here. And I actually wanted to shout out Where Pilgrim here for something that they observed in the chat. Nexstar wants to go more mainstream, I think. Recall that they started News Nation before they acquired the Hill. And I think that's actually right on the money, where I think what's happening is they're going to try and use their, million subs on YouTube to try and turn into like a more mainstream, kind of like MSNBC, Fox News ball backing, like bounce that back and forth, instead of, two authentic, like, populists behind the microphone, which again was what made their show a success in the first place, right? I mean, they are literally just shooting themselves in the feet here by this pivot. In my view, who knows, it might end up being a better business decision and all they care about is dollars and cents. But yeah, I think that's probably the in the tea leaves.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's 100% right. I think that they're absolutely going to kind of try to start pivoting into more of a mainstream direction, which is really disgusting given, the fact that this whole project Rising was built by independent-minded people, populists, progressives, etc. The appeal of Rising was never that it was a platform you go to hear establishment talking points, corporate talking points. That's the opposite. That's the only reason it was ever successful in the first place, is because, like, oh, there happens to be this one show out here where we can hear hosts and journalists and commentators giving opinions that aren't just the same fucking drivel that you hear on Fox News, CNN, and MSNBC. That was the whole fucking appeal. That was the only appeal. You think if Crystal and Saagar had just been, regurgitating mainstream talking points, that anyone would have given a single fuck about Rising? No, they wouldn't have given a shit. It never would have taken off in the way that it did, and it wouldn't have been able to sustain itself going forward if they hadn't have, continued that model of hiring people with populist opinions, with outside of the mainstream opinions. Again, even though I was never a big fan of Kim Iverson's takes, for example, there's no denying she had more of like a populist outlook. She was willing to say things that were outside of the mainstream, that she was willing to kind of push back on certain narratives. And the same goes with Katie Halper. So I just find this crazy. I guess they're going to start bringing in just corporate hacks to replace these people. So that's total insanity. But I do think that's probably the direction we're going to see the Hill slowly but surely start going. I mean, I don't think they're going to start hiring anyone that's to the left of freaking Katie Halper and Brianna Joy right now, if they've clearly put this line: you can't talk about Israel Palestine. Okay, well that takes out a lot of people. That basically rules out everyone that's actually seriously on the left if you can't talk about that issue.
Yep. And that's what they want. So that's, I mean, honestly, right? That's what they want. They want to, yeah, they're just steering the ship in a brand new direction. So I hope it fucking sinks. But yeah, thank you to Christina. Always good to see you in the chat. And thank you for the donation. Thank you so much for covering the Katie story. It's an effing disgrace that the Hill did this. Yeah, it's a fucking disgrace. But, man, let's not be surprised again by anything that the Hill does. Let's just put it that way. We know what they're fucking capable of. We've kind of had an idea for a while. This is the first time they were that explicit about it. So we just know this is not a home for independent thought. This is not a home for free debate. This is not a home for progressive values. So, we will return. And obviously it's not like Katie ever abandoned her independent media mission. She's going to continue to do that. She's going to continue, probably work with, another outlet, a truly independent media outlet, like she did with this video. So, back to the grind. It's nice to dabble in these other spaces where you can catch some viewers, but when the time to, when the rubber hits the road and it's highway time, we all got to go back to our mission of staying independent and being able to say whatever the fuck we want about anything the fuck we want.
Yeah, absolutely. And also, just a huge shout out to Katie Halper for sticking by her guns on this issue. It is a controversial issue. She very easily, after joining the Hill, could have just, conveniently stopped talking about it or bringing it up. So many people, probably 9 out of 10 people in media, journalism, whatever, they would have just taken the more convenient route, the path of least resistance. They would have said, well, now I'm working for the Hill, so it's a good thing I'm here, but I'm going to have to drop these, opinions. I'm just going to have to be a little more quiet on these opinions. That was not her approach. She saw the Hill as a platform to spread those opinions, to, further her ideology and to educate the audience of people, which probably doesn't hear a lot about the reality on the ground in Israel and Palestine, and change their mind. So she, deserves nothing but praise for this, nothing but absolute praise for this, and she could have kind of just said, okay, whatever, I'll let you guys take down my monologue, whatever. No, she pushed back on them. She said, this is bullshit. And she got fired for that. It wasn't just like she got fired for nothing. No, she got fired for pushing back on their bullshit and saying, what the hell? You got to do the right thing and publish my monologue, because never in your show's history have you censored anyone else's monologue or radar. So again, massive credit to Katie Halper. She seriously deserves so much credit, and this just proves that she is not in this for money. It proves that she's not in this for fame. So whatever disagreements you might have with Katie Halper, that's fine. But one thing that we now know 100% for sure is that she is 100% a good faith actor. She's not doing this for money or fame or attention or anything. She's actually tried to use this as a platform to educate people about apartheid, not only in Israel, but about humanitarian atrocities going on around the world.
Yep, I think that's well said. I'm excited to respond to this. Free speech doesn't apply to the left. Have you read Parenti? Black Shirts, he argues against rational fascism, aka speech absolutism, as a bourgeois ideal. Yeah, see, man, I'm going to be honest with you, and I'm going to say that this is the line of thinking that really fucked Russia in the revolution. Like this idea that, you have to forfeit all of your rights to like free speech and free thinking because that's like bourgeois enlightenment concepts and all of that kind of shit. Like, I haven't read Parenti. So I can't say specifically what you're referring to, but whenever I get into arguments with leftists and it's like, oh, actually, no, for the greater good, we have to stop fucking talking about things. It's like, yeah, that's how the left gets suckered into totalitarianism, guy. And that's not for me. So that would be my response to that. I'm not interested in a left without free speech.
Yeah, or a country without free speech. Like, yeah, divorce it from the left. Who cares about the left? I just not interested in living in a country where I can't express myself. I mean, my whole job is to freaking express myself. And guess what? A lot of my opinions are outside of the mainstream. I mean, Katie Halper just proved that. A view that I happened to share with her just was grounds for her firing over at the Hill. So yeah, I'm not interested in a world where certain opinions are off limits or anything like that. Obviously, unless you're talking about direct threats of violence or doxing or stuff like that, but that's not really supported by the First Amendment anyway. So yeah, I would have to push back on that a little bit. But admittedly, I have not read this text that you're suggesting. So maybe I'll have to look into that. Yeah, thank you so much for the super chat regardless, Uno.
And just so I can feel smart, I'll be like, Uno, have you read Chomsky on free speech? Because I feel like he would give like the alternate perspective. But to be fair, I have not read Parenti.
Yeah, neither have I. I've heard about him though. I've heard good things, so I'll check it out. Thank you once again, Adi the Bug Catcher. Thank you so much, Adi, for the $10. As someone who didn't grow up in the U.S., the undying support of Americans towards Israel is one of the things that just doesn't make sense to me. Very much like the irrational need to own guns. Yeah, no, that's definitely fair, Adi. I think that's definitely fair, and I think really a big part of the reason why America is like so committed to Israel is because they just kind of want it as their outpost in the region. That way they can kind of have control over one state in the Middle East and kind of use it as a proxy for their end goals. So that would be definitely one suggestion as to why they seem to have such a loyalty to Israel, and why we continue to fund their existence and fund their ethno-state and their genocide. So yeah, I think that's definitely true. But I mean, even as someone that did grow up in the U.S., I also don't understand it. It's not like we grow up in school learning about this stuff. Like it's just something we all are supposed to take for granted and not question.
Yeah, it's kind of like the fact that we have over 800 military bases all around the world, and that we've got that we've entire like islands around the coast of Japan is just entirely Americanized, and all kinds of shit like that. And then yeah, it's definitely because they want to have an outpost in the region, right? Like so they can be. I mean, Israel's a nuclear armed country, right? We've given what I'm saying. So they want to have that outpost set there. It's fucking so. Yes. And then on top of that, also, there's this weird Christian evangelism, which I don't think is like the primary reason, but it's definitely a part of the veneer. Gavin and I have talked about this in the past when you're dealing with like the crazy, I don't want to fucking crazy evangelicals, though. They like have this like weird need to feel like Jerusalem is like under the protection of the United States so that when the fucking like revelations come or whatever, then we can be saved, because otherwise we can. I mean, I'm telling you, you guys want to hear about some crazy hokum. This is like the Mike Pence faction of the Republican Party. Like they genuinely believe this shit. So that's how they convince their fucking supporters that this is why we need to do this.
Yeah, 100%. That's why so much of the evangelical Christian right wing actually cares like just as much about Israel, if not more, than a lot of the Jews in this country, is because in their freaking ridiculous biblical prophecy, Israel has to be controlled by the Jews in order for God to return or something like that. It sounds crazy, but that's true. Anyway,
shout out to you, Adi.
Yeah, thank you so much, Adi. Really appreciate that. And thank you also, Jenna Coomer, for the $4.99. Really appreciate that. What do you think about RBN's criticisms of breaking points when it comes to class issues? Happy Friday, friends. Enjoy the Midwest fall weekend. Well, we definitely are enjoying the Midwest fall weather. I'm just in heaven right now, to be honest, loving this weather. October and September are my favorite months of the year, so I'm in good spirits. Been really productive lately, just digging the weather so much. Anyway, as far as RBN's criticisms of breaking points, I'm not specifically familiar with what criticism you're talking about as far as class issues go, so I'd have to like evaluate the specific criticism in order to judge it. But that being said, I mean, obviously breaking points isn't like above criticism. Like I have plenty of criticisms of especially Saagar. We're going to be talking a little bit about Saagar later in today's show, and a segment that Vaush did about him. So I don't think they're above criticism. I just don't specifically know about the criticism that you're referencing here, so I can't really speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's tough to lump breaking points into one like viewpoint, right? Because it's a very heterodox show. You have Crystal and Saagar, but you also have Kyle making his appearances every once in a while. You've got Marshall making his appearances every once in a while, and then whomever the guest is, it kind of like in the same way that RBN has a bunch of different hosts, and they all, I imagine, have their own analysis of each news that's going to vary, or each piece of news that will vary like slightly or greatly depending on the topic. But to be honest, I reject the idea that breaking points has like class issues. I don't actually see that when I watch the show. I actually think that's probably a chiefly among one of the things that they're strongest at. Is kind of keeping the framework of their show through like, how is this going to impact you? Like, hey, let's do a segment on mortgages and how that's fucking skyrocketing right now, and that's crushing people. Let's talk about how X, Y, or Z is making it, really financially like difficult for people, or, oh, they're going to sacrifice the workforce to drive up unemployment as a way of like combating inflation and rebalancing everything. Like they cover that shit so well. So while I might disagree with Saagar on things like fucking student debt cancellation, and I would argue that that's a classist position that he takes, I think Crystal holds that? No, obviously she's debated it with Saagar countless times on here. So I don't know. Sometimes I think people try and come after breaking points a little bit too much. We come after them. They're not above criticisms, but like people sometimes people make a too broad. So I'd have to look at the specific criticisms, but I think they're actually pretty strong on class issues.
I do agree with that. People are like, well, like Saagar's a right winger. I'm like, yeah, he's honest about that. That's the whole point of the show, is that she's on the left and he's on the right. Like, no one is hiding the fact that Saagar is on the right. Like, that's not something that they're like pretending otherwise. Like, yeah, everyone knows that. That's literally the point of the show, to have one person on the left, one person on the right. And honestly, I think that makes for entertaining dynamic, even though I hardcore disagree with like a lot of what Saagar says. Do I want to just live in an echo chamber and only hear viewpoints that I agree with? No, like I actually do find some value in engaging with viewpoints that I don't always agree with. So yeah, I don't have a problem with that. But we are going to be talking a little bit more about that in our Q&A stream, which is going to happen right after this live stream, because we did get a question on a similar related topic about breaking points. So I'm excited to break it down further. Again, that's going to be on our Q&A stream, which is going to happen right after this stream concludes. So make sure to tune in for that as well. But thank you so much, Jenna, for the $4.99. Really appreciate it. And thank you, Hysteric Raider, for the $2. They'll bring in Cenk Uygur to replace Katie Halper. Well, that's funny. Although I do have to give Cenk Uygur credit, because for all of his faults, this actually is one issue where he's right on the money, just like Katie Halper. In fact, if you guys watch the debate he did with Dennis Prager, they got into this, and Cenk was going hard against Israel. So Cenk's actually 100% correct on this specific issue of Israel-Palestine. So for all the criticisms I have of TYT and Cenk, that's simply not one of them.
Yeah, 100%. Cenk is fire on this issue. So, I mean, yeah, and he's a good advocate for it. So, if they picked him up and put him on the Hill, I imagine one, he wouldn't do that because he's got his own network. But I mean, he always is like firmly like, no, what we're doing in Israel is wrong. So, got to give him credit for that.
Yeah, again, check out that debate he did with Dennis Prager on this specific subject. He was like screaming at Dennis Prager. Like, it was, I almost wish we reacted to it on the show, because I was like, damn, bro, you went hard as fuck. You were like fucking yelling about this. So anyway, thank you for the super chat, Hysteric Raider. Regardless, appreciate it. And I definitely, that's still funny. So thank you so much. Also, thank you, Kelly, for the $1.99. Give us 99 Vanguards over another corporate rag. 99 Vanguard. That's a lot of Zach and Gavin's running around out there in the world. I don't know if that's a good idea, but I appreciate the sentiment, Kelly.
Oh, if you're having, I don't know if I'm not even going to try and go for that. Thank you, Kelly.
Yeah, thank you so much, Kelly. Really appreciate that. Thank you so much, Carolina Boy, for the $1.99. Thoughts on the other co-host, Batia? I don't have a ton of thoughts on her, because I'm not like super well versed in her commentary. But what I have seen, I'm not particularly impressed by. She seems to be one of these like right wingers. It's like the woke left is like the single most important and pressing issue of our time, and that seems to be like, I think she wrote a whole book about it. So like, it's not really my cup of tea. Again, I don't have much experience with her commentary though, so for what I've seen, have not been impressed by.
Yeah, I've actually I don't know who that is, so I wouldn't feel comfortable saying that. What show does she co-host on? Oh yeah, no, I don't know. I don't know if I've paid that much of attention. Then I usually only click on it if it's people I know.
Yeah, she's kind of like Olai and me. They bring her in every once in a while when there's like when they need someone to fill in for someone else. So yeah, she'll probably get promoted now. Honestly, she'll probably become like a mainstay of the show now, because she's not gonna accurately label Israel as an apartheid state. So yeah, I'm sure she'll get a fat promotion now. Thank you so much, Carolina Boy. Really appreciate that. Thank you also, Tony, for the $4.99. Cornel West was denied tenure at Harvard for supporting Palestine. Yeah, I mean, I don't know if that was like explicitly the reason, but I think it's definitely like, it was definitely a factor in the reason. I think it's like almost foolish to say otherwise. So yeah, that's definitely accurate. And I remember covering that at the time.
Yeah, I mean, it was definitely politically motivated. I mean, Cornel West is so fucking accomplished, far more accomplished than other, professors that have been able to attain tenure. And I think it was clearly a response to his, ceaseless political, activism. But yeah, 100%. They are working to, basically keep and exclude anybody who holds this view, the correct view, right? The view that the people of Palestine should be free and liberated and equal with everybody else in the country of Israel. But yeah, they just are going to fight tooth and nail to keep that from any mainstream, kind of course room, to give him even more freedom to say whatever he wants with the protections that tenure affords. They were just not going to do that.
Right. Thank you so much, Tony. Really appreciate that. However, and also I think we got one more super chat. Thank you so much, Hokie Salem, for the $10, trying to keep pace with Adi. Great show, guys. Yeah, let's get a competition going here, guys. Really appreciate that, both of you. Thank you so much for the generous donations. It really, really helps out.
Yeah, appreciate you guys. Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone, for the super chats. And we do have one more story to quickly get to. That was, speaking of breaking point, speaking of Saagar, Mr. Saagar himself got called out by none other than Vaush, or as we call him, the Vaushmeister. Let's check out this. Saagar's dumbest take: Fash equals populist. So let's check this out. Obviously, there's a lot of valid criticisms of Saagar's ideology. I'm interested to see if Vaush makes any valid criticisms or if this is just another smear job. Let's see. I'm excited to check it out and get your opinion too, Zach. I watched the first bit of this, but I haven't seen the whole thing. So, let's take a look and evaluate his claims.
Breaking Point's made a video defending the Italian far-right election win as a populist uprising. Is major populist uprising coming to Europe? Breaking Points with Crystal and Saagar. I wish man, I don't know. I feel, here's my hot take, okay? We should have never stopped saying slurs, okay? Bernie Sanders should be able to say, like, and the rights of the Negro must be protected. Because the problem is that now all the hyper-racist people will just, like, dog whistle and euphemism their way through every fucking political talking point. Whereas if it was like the 1960s, people like the fucking Italy lady would just be screaming the N-word into the microphone. That's all they'd have to say.
All right, Saagar, what are you looking at?
Well, that is such an. I have to break in really quick. What a way to start this video. Let's bring back racial slurs. Like, what the fuck? Like, oh, this would be not a problem at all if we could just still say racial slurs. You are fighting from a deficit from now on, son. That is a horrible take. But let's just party on.
To be fair to Vaush, I do think he was mostly joking, but yeah, I mean.
We live in a masquerade, right? Because this is all racial politics. That's the thing. Like, all of this right-wing populism is just racism. That's it, right? Like, Donald Trump campaigned on the wall, right? Get the Mexicans out, That's protect from Black Lives Matter invading the suburbs and critical race theory in the schools. And this fucking Mussolini bitch, Mussolini V2, all her shit, she's praising fucking Nazi collaborators. She praised Mussolini, who's like the Nazi collaborator, and then she's praising like members of the Nazi party. She joined the We Love Mussolini post-World War II party. Like, but like, that in her head, it's just the N-word over and over, right? Like over and like that's it. That's the only.
All right. So I do think that obviously, right-wing populism, racism is a big element of it. There's no denying that. You're not going to find me fucking denying that. And obviously when it comes to Trump, yeah, a lot of the people that voted for Trump were, 100% racist. If you supported the policies that he was advocating for involving the border and the wall, like that, there's no denying that's racist, obviously. I do think it's a bit of a reduction, though, to say that like the entire appeal of right-wing populism is just racism, because I think that kind of ignores the real problem, which is that right-wing populists are exploiting real needs. They're exploiting real concerns of the working class by kind of appropriating the anti-establishment language of the left. So, for example, they'll talk about outsourcing a lot. That's something that Donald Trump talked about ad nauseum, was about the fact that Bill Clinton and the Democratic establishment outsourced all these jobs away. And now America is desolate as a result. The entire middle of the country, the Rust Belt, it's totally fucked thanks to these policies of outsourcing like NAFTA. And I don't think you can just totally remove that out of the equation. I think that is a big part of the reason why a guy like Donald Trump did win. Again, yes, a lot of it was racism, but I don't think you can just take that out of the equation entirely either. Like, I don't think it's fair to say that every single person that voted for someone like Donald Trump is just a irredeemable racist fascist. The reason I know that is because at least 10% of Obama voters ended up voting for Trump. I literally know people in my own life that voted for Bernie Sanders in the primary of 2016 and then turned around and voted for Donald Trump just because he seemed more anti-establishment. Not racist people. They were just so sick of the establishment. They were just so sick of the status quo that they said, fuck it. I'm going to take a chance on this guy, even though I disagree with his other policies. Now, luckily, the people that I know that did that have since, completely regretted it. And they say, I should not have voted for Trump. That was a dumb decision. But the truth still remains that Trump did exploit real concerns that people had just by lying about them. It's called faux populism. So again, he used populism to get elected, although he himself is a faux populist. But I don't think it's up for debate that Donald Trump, for example, was the more populist candidate in 2016. Hillary Clinton was the more pro-establishment candidate. Donald Trump was the more anti-establishment candidate. Again, that's just, even though he wasn't sincere about it, right?
Yeah, so there's a lot to unpack here. Look, the thing is, and I've thought about this a lot too, because like obviously you can't go out with the whole basket of deplorables kind of thing, right? But I'm also not here for hand holding. Okay, there is a massive through line in right-wing populism that is predicated on racism, but that's the story of America, right? All of our working class forever have been fed, not all of our working class, but a lot of our working class, particularly in the South, since America was, conceived, right? It was like, okay, you're poor, you're struggling, you're working hard. These people are taking it away from you. These people are standing in the way of you being an aristocrat like me, right? And it's always, always, always been a racial scapegoat that wins. And that cannot be ignored. The reason that they go with the racism thing is because it's I don't know what it's so, I mean, it fucking sells to people, man, and I feel like we can't ignore that. Like if there's a reason that all these people fucking hate critical race theory. There's a reason that all, like, you know what I'm saying? But it's I don't think it's because they couldn't not be. Right. It's just this is what's been sold to them, and it sounds better to them than the fucking fakeness and the bourgeois of it all, right? And the reason that Trump even though Trump was a fucking billionaire, he was like a working class person's idea of a millionaire. Matt Taibbi wrote really well about this. He would eat like fucking, Big Macs on a fucking silver platter and like take a shit in a golden toilet and stuff like that. Like, so it still felt more relatable to, working class people. Whereas like Hillary Clinton just seemed like a fucking aristocratic, like, unapproachable kind of person. So it is a myriad of things, but I think that I'm a little bit, I think that I kind of get where Vaush is coming from, where it's like you can get all of those things like the working class solidarity, healthcare, like, all of these kinds of things from the progressive left. But what you can't get from the progressive left is like a bunch of racism and prejudice. Who's drawing the bigger crowds, right? And we got to ask ourselves, like, for what reason? Like, I mean, to an extent, I think that there is a big problem with racism in the right-wing populist sphere.
Oh, no one's denying that at all. Like I said, there's a massive element of racism. I think it's undeniable. All I'm saying is that basically, at least in my opinion, populism kind of just is a synonym for anti-establishment politics. And there is no denying that, like Trump, for example, was running against the establishment more than Hillary. He was saying like, make America great again. Hillary was saying America's already great, so on and so forth. You know what I'm saying?
Oh, no. That I do agree with. I think that, yeah, that's why he won. I think that they're able to expand their troops really widely. Because I don't know, they're all willing to fall in line. Like, the racism wasn't a deal breaker for anybody, right? So it's like, I don't think all of them came for the racism, right? Like, maybe half of them came for the like racism because they like, there are a lot of Republican racists. Don't fucking kid yourself, right? We all know this. Gavin and I live in fucking Bible Belt. But there were a lot of other people that came because he was talking about jobs. There were a lot of other people that came because he was, because Hillary Clinton said that they were baskets of deplorables. There were people that came because they thought that Hillary was so corrupt, and at least Donald Trump would be like a renegade, like a wrecking ball, and all those things. So all of those things are true. But then, it's kind of like, well, you didn't disqualify the guy because he said a lot of like really horrible shit. So it's like, I think that's the best way to analyze it. So I think that's, Vaush is being a little bit oversimplified here, but I do get the point he's making.
Yeah, and I think Fatima is actually 100% correct here. Trump's rhetoric was anti-establishment, but he wasn't anti-establishment at all. You had to be a complete moron to buy his shtick, even in 2016. I 100% agree with that, Fatima. I'm not sure if you live in America, there's a lot of complete morons that do live here. So yeah, I mean that's that. Yeah, he took advantage of a lot of really stupid people. We happen to live in the world capital of stupidity. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, if we do have that's totally true, and yeah, and yeah, he was able to seize upon every single one of the worst impulses that he knew laid within the American electorate, and that was what made him successful. He just exploited all of it, and part of that was, you know, obviously racism, and part of that was a disdain for the elites, and part of that was you know, NAFTA and not having a fucking good job anymore, and all these different kinds of things. So yeah, it's a myriad of things that got him elected, and represent the like new right wing populist idea. But you know, I do tend to sympathize with Vaush that there is a through line there that's not present in, you know, the other political factions, and that's you know, you know.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's fair. But I mean, then you would have to say the same thing about Democrats, because the Democrats just voted for Joe Biden, who's the history of, or the chief architect of mass incarceration. Like, arguably, Joe Biden has actually instituted more racist policies in his lifetime than Donald Trump did. And I don't think you would say, well, everyone that voted for Joe Biden just voted for Joe Biden because of racism and because they hate black people. Like, I think that's also a little bit reductionist. You know what I'm saying?
No, 100%. Joe Biden, without a doubt, you know, caused more devastation to the black community than Donald Trump did. I mean, that's just a fact, right? This man was the chief architect of the crime bill. He never found a crime bill that he didn't like. He you know, he used the super predator rhetoric. I mean, yeah, 100%. Joe Biden is a virulent racist. He eulogized Strom Thurmond, guys. This guy is a fucking racist. But the difference that I would say about Joe Biden, and this is the difference between the Democrats and the Republicans. It's in America, it's like, how do you take your racism? Is it the fucking, you know, like, I don't see color. I only wanted to fucking dictate, you know, how the power structures operate in this country. You know, I'm for the like silent, subtle, like corporate racism. You know, and then all the poor people just go to jail. That's the fucking, you know, neoliberal Silicon Valley kind of racism. And I think that Joe Biden, you know, kind of represents that. You know, and then you have just Donald Trump, like open, like the rhetoric, the actual rhetoric that you're like, wow, I can't believe you said that kind of racism. That's his brand. So yeah, they're both racist, of course. It's just like, pick your poison. And that's why I don't think that, yeah, you have to say that everybody that voted for Joe Biden, his racism wasn't a deal breaker for them too. You have to own it across the board. I'm not saying that. I just think that the fact that Donald Trump was so brash and brazen and explicit in his rhetoric around, you know, his disdain for, you know, and all the way like shithole countries that, you know, like fucking shooting baskets with the fucking paper towels to the devastated people because he didn't give a fuck about them. They were brown. Like this kind of real shit. Like, you know, I don't know. Our whole country's fucked. We've gotten on a real tangent here, but yeah, everybody that's ever been president has been like fucking a white supremacist, and unfortunately, even Barack Obama upheld so much white supremacy. You know, he was so shit scared of, you know, being, you know, pissing off the fucking powers that be that he did not even stand up during Ferguson or any of the fucking opportunities.
So true. So true. Thank you also, Dieter McBusiness, American Wasp. Thank you so much for the $4.99. Biden claimed not even a majority of Republicans are MAGA Republicans. Check the arithmetic. MAGA Republicans are 2/3 of the GOP, 1/3 of the voting public. Yeah, no, that's so true. And yeah, Biden tried so hard to make sure that he wasn't going to piss off like the Republicans. Oh, it's not everyone; it's just a small minority. But in reality, it is the majority. Like if it's not a majority of Republicans that are MAGA Republicans, then why is Donald Trump going to absolutely destroy the competition when the primary happens? That's because the majority of Republicans at this point are 100% MAGA Republicans. So that's undeniable. Thank you so much, Dieter McBusiness.
Yep. Thank you, Dieter. Always good to see you in the chat.
Really appreciate that. And let's keep watching.
That's what she has in her head, you know? But we have to pretend that this is some kind of like principled populist uprising or something.
of unintended consequences. And a force is so big that they direct the course of history, both on the individual but on the macro level. It's actually humbling often to realize.
I think Saagar is anti-student debt relief. Saagar is just a fascist. He's not in favor of any economic populism. If he was, he would be talking about nationalizing businesses. The only times fascists have ever cared about nationalizing or curtailing businesses is when they consider them part of the international Jewish cabal. That's true. That literally, like Charlie Kirk does the same thing. They're like, yes, well, we hate big businesses. We hate the fact that they disseminate woke values to our students. You know, it's like, we know what you care about. You don't give a fuck about big business. Okay, so vote for higher taxes then. Vote for higher regulations. Bring back Glass-Steagall. Oh, no? You don't want any of that? No, of course not. Because when you say big business, you mean international Jewry. That's what you mean. It's not sub.
I would actually like to fucking ask Saagar if he supports bringing back Glass-Steagall, because I think he probably would, just to jump in there really quickly. I mean, Saagar is not anti any kind of regulation. He's a little bit more reasonable, or I think he's a bit more reasonable than Vaush is portraying him right here. Vaush went from like 0 to 60, hasn't really introduced a point, and has just gone to calling this guy a fucking fascist. This is what Vaush does. Like, we debated Vaush, right? And immediately it was just like, okay, we already, won the argument. Now let's talk about World War II and like whataboutism for like 35 minutes. I don't know. He's just like screaming about the guy being a fascist. He hasn't really set up any pillars. He's just said a bunch of things that I don't know necessarily to be true about Saagar. Like, Saagar does believe in some regulation. He oh, if you're not supporting fucking nationalizing everything, you're a fascist. It's like, well, pump the brakes there, guy. Like, let's have a conversation. That just seemed like a little wild.
Also, let's not forget that Vaush literally called us fascists. But before he met us, he didn't say it to our face, but before he actually debated us, he did a video responding to our video where we were responding to his video. Anyway, he was like, by the way, these people are fascists, without even like proving it at all. He just called us fascists, like without any proof, without anything. Like, I don't know why he thought we were fascists. I think he might have thought that we were like tankies or something, even though we're not. But either way, it's like he really does just call anyone a fascist. And also, like, again, not to downplay like fucking racism and anti-Semitism and stuff, but to say that all criticisms of like big corporations and like, corporate America and stuff is just like a dog whistle for like hatred of the Jewish cabal. Like, that's ridiculous, man. Like, again, there's a reason why populist rhetoric works even when it's faux populist, and it's not just because like anti-Semitism. It's because big business is actually destroying this country, arguably the world. Capitalism. Again, Vaush is someone who claims to be anti-capitalist. Big business is the manifestation of big capital. Like, how to call that out is not to be anti-Semitic. To call out corporations is not an anti-Semitic dog whistle. So I do find that a little bit ridiculous, a little bit out of the blue, I guess. And also, again, like, I have tons of disagreements with Saagar. I really do. But Saagar's not a Trump supporter. I feel like Vaush thinks that he's like a Trump supporter. But Saagar does not support Trump. I don't think he supports this fascist Mussolini woman in Italy either. He's doing this radar saying basically that she did take advantage of populist sentiments in order to get elected. That's undeniably true, but he's not himself supporting her, at least to my knowledge. So again, I'm not trying to fucking defend Saagar here. I disagree with him on a shit ton. If you go policy by policy, I probably agree with Vaush more on a lot of stuff, but I think it's going a little bit far to call him a fucking fascist.
Yeah, look, to be like, oh, the only time you like ever hear right wing big, and Saagar doesn't even like calling himself right wing anymore, because people will say shit like this. They'll be like, well, right wingers don't support it, and he'll be like, well, fine, then I'm a centrist. And then it's like, do you see, you're actually talking to somebody who's willing to come around to things like, let's just not fucking back this guy into a corner and call him a fucking piece of shit fascist. Let's talk about this, right? I don't know. It just seems like, and obviously he's just trying to dunk on the guy. He doesn't give a fuck. He's just trying to, like, Saagar is stand-in conservative for Vaush to destroy and feed red meat to his audience. That's how, this game works. But yeah, it was just super disingenuous right off the bat. And I get it. You don't have to be, earnest when you critique people and savagely destroy them. But yeah, off to a rough start from Vaush.
Yeah, and as much as I would love to keep watching this clip, guys, we do have our Q&A coming up in 15 minutes, and I really wanted to quickly edit out a clip of the of the discussion we had earlier in the show about Katie Halper. So I was hoping to do that in the 10-minute interim until our next stream. So we are going to have to abandon poor Vaush. Maybe we'll get back to that later. Either way, thank you so much, Adi, the bug catcher, for the $10. I feel like we, the left, is way too harsh on Trump supporters. A polite, open-minded conversation with one is the best way to educate and convert them. I've done it a few times. Oh, absolutely. 100%, Adi. I think that's so true. And to Vaush's credit, I do think he'd be willing to do that with Saagar. Because like I said, he also called us a fascist. And then he was actually willing to sit down for a reasonable conversation with us. I think he would be freaking jumping at the bit to get Saagar on the show and talk to him too, which I would like to see happen. I think that would be a really interesting conversation, a really interesting exchange of ideas. Yeah, well, I totally agree with you, Adi. I do think that Vaush would actually be open for that too.
Vaush will debate anybody. He would fucking love that. Not only that, it would be huge for his channel because his audience would like that. Not huge for his channel, but like it would be a draw, right? Like he would definitely do that. And I would love to watch it. And typically it's true that Vaush, he follows the same kind of a playbook that a lot of people in the streaming world do. It's like, yeah, I'll drag you, rake you over the coast, but let's just set all that aside and start debating from square one. And he does usually wait until the other combatant in the debate like starts getting super crazy before he does. He's good at like kind of maintaining control, which is good. Unless you watch a fucking wild ass interview, I would love to see it go like full on like Vaush, Mike from PA with Saagar. They start like fucking taking their clothes off and screaming at each other through the microphone. No, I'm kidding, obviously.
Yeah, and again, I'm really not trying to defend Saagar too much, guys. Like he has had some fascist opinions in the past, like when the George Floyd riots were going on, and he was like defending Trump's deployment of the military on the U.S. streets. He's advocated against the legalization of cannabis. So don't get me wrong, he definitely has like fascist tendencies and has had fascist opinions. I just think some of the reasons why like Vaush was like implying that his arguments were just anti-Semitic and that he was just dog whistling like about how he hates the cabal of Jewish globalists. Like I don't think that's really fair criticisms of Saagar. But that being said, I'm really not trying to defend his some of his like worst political opinions because we've been on the record hardcore disagreed with a lot of what he says too.
No, but we're fucking consistent. So I'm not just going to listen to somebody and be like, hey, this guy is like a fucking fascist. Like, he like hates the Jew. Like what? No, like this is just, that's not rooted in reality. Like, yeah, he sent me over the edge and we were pulling our hair out and screaming about this on the microphone, during the George Floyd, everything that was going down. Like, cannot fucking believe that shit that he was supporting that. I mean, it made me outraged. I couldn't fucking believe it. I was like, I was like, how dare you call yourself a populist? Like I was mad. So yeah, of course I've called out Saagar, but I'm not going to fucking pretend that this guy is like, completely unreachable or like you can't negotiate with him at all because he's Charlie Kirk. Like you cannot pretend that Saagar has the same politics as Charlie Kirk. You just can't. It's not rooted in reality.
Yeah, 100% true, 100%. And again, we are going to have to cut the stream a little bit short because in less than 15 minutes, we're going to be going live once again for our monthly Q&A stream. It's always a great time, guys. Probably our favorite streams of the month is the Q&As because we get to chat with you guys. We get to be held accountable by you guys if you want to call us out or, ask us why we're such fucking pieces of shit or whatever you want to do. Feel free to do that. Again, just head on over to our other stream, which is about to go live in like 10 minutes. It's always a really fun time. So hit that up, everyone. Make sure to join us for our Q&A stream. Big shout out to the Patreon community before we get out of here. Obviously, the link's in the description if you enjoy the conversation we just had. If you want to see more, if you enjoy our perspective as, lefties, then really, 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 really helps out if you support us on Patreon. Obviously, we're 100% viewer funded. We're not getting our freaking checks signed by billionaires over at the Hill or anything like that. We rely 100% on you guys. So thank you so much for the support. And again, if you're interested in becoming a Patreon or a patron yourself, then the link is in the description. As always, patreon.com/the Vanguard channel. So yeah, thank you guys so much. Big shout out.
Yeah, absolutely. Take care, everybody. See you in like 10, 15 minutes.
Yeah, see you guys in like 10 minutes. Peace out.